Icon Audio Arts.
The Icon True History Series, George Washington, a biography for young people. Written by James Frederick Brown. Narrated by Geoffrey Giuliano and the Icon Players.
Historical events and the people who shaped them are a seminal part of the content of Icon audiobooks. For as they say, those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. We therefore find it imperative to reach back into antiquity, to examine the events which have shaped our complex and ever-changing world. Here at Icon, you will come to understand the stories behind the crafting of our collective history. Stories of real people, both famous and unknown, and the triumphs and tragedies they endured which went on to so greatly impact the lives of everyday people everywhere, then as now. We seek to understand, therefore, both the world today and the promise of tomorrow. Welcome, then, to Icon Audio Art's unique look at that which went before. And welcome, too, to your own individual part in that eventful history.
Chapter 1. Boyhood. George Washington was born in the state of Virginia, at a place known as Bridges Creek, on February 22, 1732. His great-grandsire John Washington came from England in the year 1657 and took up lands in that state and was a rich man. George was the son of his grandson Augustine. Augustine's first wife was Jane Butler, who died and left him with 2 boys. His next wife was Mary Ball, and George was her first child. The old homestead in which George was born stood near the banks of the Potomac River and was built with a steep roof that sloped down to low eaves that hung out far from the main wall. There were 4 rooms on the ground floor and some near the roof, and at each end of the house was a great fireplace built of brick with broad hearthstones such as were in style in those days. A stone is all that marks the birthplace of George Washington. He was not more than 8 years of age when his father went to live on a farm near the Rappahannock River. The house was built much in the same style as the one at Bridges Creek, but it stood on high ground, and here all his boyhood days were spent. As there were no good schools in America at the time, those who had the means sent their sons to England to be taught and trained. Lawrence Washington was sent when he was 15 years of age, and as he was the firstborn, it was thought that he would in time take his father's place as head of the house. The school to which George was sent stood in a field on his father's land, and was taught by a man named Hobby. This gave it the name of the Hobby School. There were but 3 things taught there: how to read, how to write, and how to do sums. And some folks thought that these were all their boys and girls had need to learn. Books were scarce and dear, and as most of the men raised fine crops and kept up a brisk trade, they were well pleased to have their boys learn how to buy and sell and to make out bills. George had been trained by his father, who was a strict and yet a just man, to love the truth and to do right at all times. He was made to feel that it was a sin to tell a lie, and much worse to hide a fault than to own it. George had a small axe, of which he was quite proud and boylike. He cut right and left with it, and thought not of the harm he might do. On the lawn stood a small tree, which his father hoped to see grow up to a good height and bear fine fruit. George made a great gash in this tree with his sharp axe, and when his father saw it, he was quite sad. He called the boy to his side, and in a stern voice said, "Who did this? Who cut this tree?" George hung his head with shame. He knew he had done wrong, and he stood in fear of his father, who he knew would use the rod where the...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?